What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. Hope you had a great week. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. I am your host, Jeremiah Fox. For this first portion of the show, we're going to zoom out to Seattle, Washington. Today, I've got the pleasure of a couple internationally renowned jazz artists, both of which I've been following for some time. Really amazing musicians. And the two of them at the beginning of the year put out a duet album together. And right as they were getting to do their release parties and celebrate all the hoopla, boom, like a fly in a fly trap. COVID hit, shut down venues, and it's been a very interesting time for musicians. So we're going to talk today about this awesome album, which they didn't get to do the release party for. So hopefully in some way, this is a bit of a release for them, however small it may be. And then just talk about the music industry in general. But before we bring on our first guest, I wanted to deliver to you the message of the week. This comes from one of my former drum students. He was just a wee little lad when I started teaching him, but now he's a grown man and he's got a successful music business out of Buffalo, New York. And he just posted this on Facebook the other day, literally just like hit me. And this show was on the books already. So I felt it very appropriate to keep it all in the circle and pass it on. This is a quote from Aldous Huxley, who I was turned onto as a teenager, started reading some of his books like The Doors of Perception. And he said, after silence, that which comes nearest to expressing the inexpressible is music. So we're going to try to express ourselves today. Everybody got a lot to say these days for sure. So zoom in to Seattle, Washington. Welcome to the show, Ted Poor. How you doing today, Ted?
I'm doing great, Jeremiah. Thanks for having me. Good to see
My
you.
pleasure. My pleasure. Just to give everybody a little bit of a background, you are a graduate of Eastman School of Music, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I grew up in the Rochester, New York area, went to school at Eastman, and moved to New York City right after I graduated in 2003.
And you're now in Seattle, where you teach at what school? I read it and I forgot. I don't want to miss it.
Oh, I remember the University of Washington. I'm starting, I think, my 8th year here.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's flying by. We moved out here in 2013 to start that job, where I was joining my good friend Kung Vu, who is a Seattle native. Um, and I met Kung in New York and was playing in his band, and he moved back to Seattle and ended up joining the program at the UW here and lured me out. And it's been a great move.
Yeah, you've enjoyed that move.
Yeah. It's we were just having our second kid, and we were in a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, and we thought, well, let's just try something else. We can always move back, and of course,
Yeah,
we miss New York dearly, but we get back very frequently for my work or to visit family during normal
right.
non-pandemic times.
Yes.
So we make sure to get our New York fix as often as possible.
Awesome. Do you still have family in the Rochester area?
No, actually, I until recently I did, but my parents moved out to Seattle a few months ago, actually just
Well,
before the pandemic. So we're around the turn of around the new year,
gotcha.
um, and it's been great to have them out here. But so yeah, that's the last of the Rochester roots. We're all out of
Wow.
there.
I mentioned to you when we spoke last week or a couple weeks ago, my wife grew up there, and she also was a graduate of the University of Rochester.
Yeah,
She studied math at the River campus,
yeah,
and she still has two sisters that live there. So we constantly go back and romp around, and like
yeah.
Java's is still there,
Oh
you
man,
know.
Java's. That's the coffee shop right on Gibbs Street, just down the street from the Eastman School of Music. Yeah, that that I played there sometimes 2, 3, 4 times a week. That was
Yeah,
the hang. In some ways, that was the outside of school. That was the real education.
this school, yeah. I,
Is
I
playing.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
I
no, go
think the
ahead.
first time I saw you play was back then in the alleyway between the school and you guys were outside and like
Oh
in the
wow.
front of the little breezeway between the coffee shop and the school. And we were just like, we used to go there all the time. I only lived in Rochester for about a year
Yeah.
before I moved to Buffalo. I was just there like transiently, but yeah, we had just like ventured down there one evening, and it was a nice night out. And
Yeah.
I think that was the first time I saw you play. I think the second time was seeing Jersey Band. I was just like, what? which was amazing. Still one of my favorite all-time bands, like top five. It's like,
Oh, thank you.
like Mr. Bungle, Zappa, Jersey Band. You guys are like right up there. Is anything happening with those guys anymore? I haven't seen anything in a while. It's been a bit.
No, no, unfortunately not. We're all a little spread
You guys
out
are
at this
all
point.
asunder. Yeah.
Yeah, and that music is so demanding and complicated. It really, we had to be together to do it. There's talk, every year or so, there's talk of trying to get something together or record remotely. So
Yeah.
at some point we'll have a reunion because it's such a special group of musicians. Gosh,
It is. It is amazing, and the music is fantastic, and kind of watching it grow. So I'm good friends with Mike Williams and Tim Allen and PJ
Yeah,
Lynn from Thought, and I remember Mike telling me about you, like this group of jazz musicians, and I
yeah.
was like, cool. And you guys were playing in Buffalo, and he was like, they're playing at I think it was Pearl Street Brewery. And he was like, you should come out. And so I gathered a few friends of mine, and I was like, oh, these jazz guys are playing downtown tonight.
Nice.
To our surprise.
Yeah,
It was fantastic. And all my friends were like, yeah, we're going to go play pool. And I was just like mesmerized. Just like, I'm not leaving this spot. So kudos to you guys. That was really like, that was like a growing experience for me. I came a man that day. Show me all the work I had to do.
Oh man.
Really great stuff. And your position at the University of Washington is like a drum instructor. Is that your main position there?
Well, it's a full-time position. I'm an assistant professor in the jazz studies program there. So, yeah, I teach all the drummers, but I also teach one-on-one lessons with other instrumentalists, working on improvising and writing and theory and musicality in general. Then I coach an ensemble, a small group ensemble, and in the fall, every fall quarter, excuse me, I teach a course I developed called Theory and Application of Rhythm, and it's just a course that's open to all music students, not just drummers or jazz musicians, geared towards cultivating a really grounded pulse, and then learning to express more and more intricate and nuanced rhythms within that pulse and against that pulse, and taking responsibility for all elements of the rhythms that we use in music.
Yeah, you need it. You need it
Yeah.
for sure. And in addition to the teaching position, you have quite an active performing and recording career as well, correct?
Yeah, it's been up until the last few months. Thankfully, just really
we'll
busy.
get to that.
Yeah, I know.
We'll get there.
Good news. Yeah. It's the last several years. I feel really fortunate to have so many irons in the fire. Kind of, for several years now, played for Andrew Bird, a great singer songwriter out of Los Angeles, and that's just been a phenomenal band. And we've traveled the world and made a couple records together, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity. Playing for a great singer has put me in touch with some really important things musically that I bring back to the jazz world, just about feel and attention to detail in the simple things.
Yeah.
Then we just released a record earlier this year, signed with Verve label group, and the first record came out on Impulse back in February. There it is. Yeah.
Andrew was nice enough to give me a copy and a copy of his.
So that's good.
We got it. I haven't opened them yet, so I was like, these are backdrops today. Little product plug.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Yeah. So I'm so proud of that music that we made, and we're getting ready to take it around the country and the world, hopefully, and that's on hold at the moment, but we'll get there.
You just said something interesting about having multiple irons in the fire, and that was something, I studied music as well and was a freelancer for a while, and I'd worked for this guy. So I own a restaurant in Brooklyn, which I'm sitting in right now, and I'm involved in a number of other things in the show centering around entrepreneurship, but also just like all the other fun things I've done and still are involved in. I was chasing like the music dream maybe I was in my undergrad or just starting my master's, and this guy I'd worked for like 8 years as a kid, who's now like franchise restaurant owner and just like business personality. He, you know, I was all over the place, and he was a very focused kind of person. And he was just like, okay, do whatever you want to do, but just keep this in mind. It's better to own 20% of 5 things than 100% of one.
Whoa.
And that one stuck with me. He said a lot of really profound things to me, most of which I ignored. And now I'm like playing them back and I'm like, oh, I should have listened to that sooner. But that one kind of stuck with me. And as I was, you know, I was teaching as well, which is a great source of income. Anybody that you know, is a performer knows like that's a more steady source of income than sometimes gigging. But all these other little things were pulling at my ear, and like the restaurant thing just kind of happened. I mean, I grew up in it, but I was always trying to run away from it. And at a certain point, it was just like, this just makes sense, you know, to do at this point in my life. And you seem like somebody who's been successful doing that within the music industry itself. Yeah? You feel that way?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think it certainly helps, you know, my instrument, the drums, that is plays a key role in so many different types of music. So I got that going for me. But yeah, I've always been interested, like genuinely interested in different types of drumming. And I think of it as, you know, different languages, and you have to learn different vocabularies, and there's different sets of priorities in different situations. And every situation is different. So as an idea has always interested me. And I like the challenge of finding myself in different situations and having to figure out what specifically my job is in this room with these people, you know, and then figuring out how to do a great job to my liking, you know, to stay true to my values as a musician and what I think is important and righteous and what's not, you know, and try to just do it in an honest and personal way. And because I believe ultimately that's what people want to hear. That's why somebody picks up the phone and calls you, not somebody else. It's not because you're better necessarily. It's just you have done the work, hopefully, to express yourself openly and honestly, and that's unique to all of us. You know?
Yeah, and just totally tying into that Aldous Huxley quote, which Ted didn't know about earlier. I didn't share that, so that's a great segue, man.
Oh man.
So, you know, like drummers, I think in particular, are well equipped for that kind of like schizophrenia, because first of all, you have to learn a million different styles, you know, and be able to change them on a dime, but then all 4 limbs are also going in a different direction. So like well equipped for the good business acumen as well. So you have teaching, there was performance, live, but also recording. Are there any other aspects of the music industry that over the years you've kind of folded in that have just been like, not even a massive source of income, but just something that contributed that just, you know, more from like a business perspective that have helped you out along the way?
Just this sort of current, you know, and it is a result to some extent of our current situation here, but writing and doing some home recording with an idea of trying to get some placements in film and TV or commercials, or writing song starts or beats or what have you, vibes that producers and artists might write to or take and run with, you know, and contribute to other people's records that way. You know, I think like a lot of people, I've tried to up my home recording situation a little bit, just to get something respectable happening. And it doesn't take all that much, you know. And it's been really fun to sort of cut my teeth on that. And, you know, I have a lot of close friends in Los Angeles, and they've been, you know, scratching away, working on projects and records despite the situation. And so I've gotten some work that way of, you know, sending up tracks, and I record some drums. And I really like that challenge, because you're alone in the room. You're the producer and the performer. There's nobody giving feedback. Hey, that's a good idea, or don't do that. You know, you got to come to your conviction on your own. Yeah.
Great. So kind of venturing into production a little bit.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say that I signed a publishing administration deal with Big Deal Music, and they have a really active sync and placement department. So it's been a nice. I have an outlet where I can send. I have a Dropbox folder. I send tracks and beats and starts and just ideas, even fragments, and I know that they get distributed to a lot of people, and maybe something sticks, somebody hears something they like. And so that's just been a nice thing to have as a potential home for some of these ideas.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, we're going to take a quick break. All right. So hang tight. The rest of you hang tight. We'll be back in about 60 seconds. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. Welcome back, folks. If you are just tuning in, this is the Entrepreneurial Web. I'm your host, Jeremiah Fox. Today, this first portion of the show, we are speaking to Ted Poor. He's a very well-known jazz drummer and a professor at the University of Washington. He's in Seattle today. We are zooming out. We are talking to him about an album he released along with my friend and neighbor, Andrew D'Angelo, called You Already Know. At the beginning of the year, they had some release shows planned. and then of course, all communication with the human race ended. And it's been an interesting ride since then. I was following along, Ted, when you all were posting, especially your release shows in Seattle. You guys had a big kind of thing planned, lighting and everything. And in the last minute, you were like, yeah, this is not a good idea, guys. We're going to have to pull the plug on this. Seattle was kind of it was a hot spot even before New York, correct?
Yeah, I think it was. We were, when you think back, it was, nobody knew really exactly. I mean, I guess some experts could see it, the writing on the wall, but it was a very confusing time. And with my friend Kung Vu, we had worked up a batch of new music and some music from the record, and a good friend, Abigail Portner, who's an amazing visual artist, was doing, making custom live projection art we were going to have that for the show. And the day before the show, I think it was just enough of uncertainty in the air that I just felt like, man, I can't ask all these people to come gather in a space. It just didn't feel right. We did manage to we had a day booked on a sound stage, like a video sound stage. And so we were able to set up and do a lot of filming of the projections with solo drums, and Kung came for some of that. So I was able to really make some sort of studio pieces out of it that we'll use in the coming months here. But yeah, the show had to go on hold.
Yeah, and here Andrew would talk to me about my business partner owns the local wine store, which is it was like the bar before there was a bar around here. It was just like really popping and a lot of traffic, and we've had live music there probably like 10 times a year.
Yeah.
I know that.
I love that shop.
Oh, you know it. Yeah. And tons of people have played there over the years. And when it's nice out, we set up on the sidewalk. So we had talked about, like, once the weather gets nice, we'll do something outside. And a lot of people around here know him, and this is like home to so many performing artists, this neighborhood, like a bunch of high level guys. And with like great plan. And then like, we can't even do tastings now there, which is sad, because that was like almost daily, right. And this whole thing really put the kibosh on all of it. The album was released in 2020. Is that correct?
Yeah. February 28th, it came out. Yeah.
Woo. And as you guys were getting close to that, was this idea, like the idea of a pandemic, even on your mind? Was it anything even of concern at the time? Because I know here in New York, it just like I would see it as like a hashtag on Twitter, and I was like, that doesn't apply to us, And then it felt like just all of a sudden, like the cartoon where the big rockets dropped on the rabbit, and it's like, you just like smack.
Yeah. I mean, I think at first we all wanted to kind of ignore it or just not make much of it. And then the cloud just kept getting darker over you, and you couldn't look away, especially for those of us that were organizing events. You start to think about everyone's safety, including your own, of course. And it's like, nope, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, a similar situation in restaurants. I remember there was like this little cluster in Westchester they kept talking about, and it was the first week of March, and they were talking about how they had to close all the dining rooms or all the restaurants in Westchester. Brutal. And I was like, please don't do that here. Please don't do that here. And then a week later, I'm kind of grateful that we got that little warning, because even though I was in denial, in the back of my head, I was like, prepare. Yeah. And somehow we pulled it off. We were delivery only for 3 months. And then
Amazing.
it's been outdoor seating only since then until just 2 nights ago. And then they were like, okay, you can have 25% in your restaurants.
Yeah.
And of course, nobody wants to sit inside, so it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. What's the scene like in Seattle, like in terms of businesses and openings? Is it very similar, or have things opened up a little more there?
You know, it sounds similar to what you're describing. I think
Mm.
we're on similar time. I don't keep really close tabs on it, to be honest, because
You
it's
just haven't left. I remember you were texting me and you were like, "There's smoke. There's smoke
oh
outside. The kids are learning remote. Like we can't go outside. It's just like crazy." And I was just like, "Oh man, it's
yeah,
doomsday."
the week of smoke that was a very unwelcome layer to the whole thing.
Yeah, but that is since cleared.
That is clear. We have a little
Okay,
bit back now, but it's not nearly as bad. So, um, yeah, I don't know.
definitely making for resilient times.
Yeah, yeah. It makes you feel like everything's relative. You know, you ask people, "Hey, how you doing?" And or someone asks you that, and it's like, "Well, how do I answer that?" In the grand scheme of things, I'm doing amazing. You know, like we have money to buy food. How lucky are we? It's like it
Right.
gets pretty primal very quickly, and you have
Yeah.
to, but it makes you appreciate what you have.
Big time. And I have this gut feeling that it's going to create a bit of a renaissance in terms of the arts. First of all, I think a lot of people who are just kind of half-assing it are going to, this is the time if you, unless you absolutely love what you're doing and are totally dedicated, you're not going to put the effort in because of that primal fear,
Yeah.
that it's going to get rid of a lot of jokers, but also the people that are legit and like you were talking about earlier, being honest and sincere. Got a lot to say. I mean, you've had a little bit to say over the last couple of days, haven't you?
Yeah.
I saw a couple. I didn't know you could rap. Was that actually like I was trying to listen in the restaurant last night? I was like, is he rapping? Is that was you?
That was like, yeah, my friend Dan Weiss, who's an amazing drummer, he posted this video called the Vote 'em Out Groove Challenge. Sort of, he's just provoked everybody, hey, like
Yeah.
some kind of mantra or rap about voting and voting him out, and then play a drum groove along with it, and that was so fun. So I've got all kinds of ideas. I'll try to keep
Yes,
spitting them
sounds
out.
like it. But to that effect, like I really think all these things are really putting people's their real emotions up front. People are having to face it and then
Yeah,
figuring out ways, outlets to make it happen. Talk to a number of other musicians around here about that, and they seem to be in agreement that some good things will probably come out of this. I've got a young bartender that works for me, and he grew up in New York, Puerto Rican kid, and but he's I don't know, he's not even 30 yet, and so he kind of wasn't around in the 70s and 80s and doesn't remember kind of what the scene was like then. And at the beginning of this, he's just like walking around like, what the hell is going on? And I'm
yeah.
like, it's we've been through things similar to this before. And I mentioned the 70s and 80s, and he was like, what good could come out of that? And I was like, well, we got hip hop. And he was like, damn. Just like, like it's not like silver lining, but this pressure makes diamonds for sure, and I feel like there's going to be some great things that come out of this. And I've seen just across the board, like the musicians that I follow on social media, people kicking out like tons of digital work. And you were saying recording from home. Do you remember how hard it was to record like
Hmm.
15 years ago remotely? If you weren't like in a studio, like to get good, clean, like digital recording, it was just like nearly impossible. And now, what does it cost you? A few $100. Like the Zoom, I don't know if you mess with the Zoom products at all, but like the H6, that's like fantastic. You
Hmm.
get some really clean stuff. And they have this new one that's like looks like a spider
Oh
that
wow.
apparently is like, have you seen this? It's like an
No.
8-track recorder, 8-track handheld, and it looks like a spider. It's crazy. And you can mix in everything right in there, but the quality is like fantastic.
Yeah.
So just keep seeing more and more things like that, and just pushing the creative envelope. And I think I don't know. I think it's going to make some good stuff happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think we all have to respond, and I think we're all dying also to have artistic conversations in our
Yeah.
mediums.
Hmm.
And so as things, open up, I think there's going to be a lot of really, you know, fertile conversations happening in the
Yeah.
arts, figuratively, and because we're all craving that. That's the one thing that's hard when you're at home and you have, I have my drums, I have my mics, keyboard, piano, whatever. But I can only have a conversation with myself, and that gets old. It's, you know, it's easy to start ideas. It's hard to sustain them and feel them,
Yeah.
finish them, because there's no context. It's like hard to find a reason why to finish something. So
Yeah.
um,
But
yeah,
like you said earlier, even sending out these little chunks to people, like
yeah,
these could be the seeds for something once you do get the opportunity to sit down with somebody to
yeah,
really turn into something. You pass it on a little bit, and all of a sudden it's like something big comes out of it, something nice.
yeah,
What was I going to say? The other thing I kind of am starting to see happen is in certain cases, not in all, for sure, but artists and like venue owners and operators and platform owners and operators kind of coming together. Sure, there's some venue owners that are still like, no, we're doing things the old school way, like fuck you, pay me, like that kind of vibe. But I've seen some other like relationships blossoming that could kind of, you know, escort things to a better place as the dust kind of settles from this. And that's reassuring too, because that was always it can be a source of contention, you know, especially in New York. It's tough. It's a tough room sometimes.
yeah,
So hopefully those kind of relationships will grow and develop the same way.
yeah. I agree. I hope so too. And it does, with the lack of travel, you know, it kind of brings the music back to a local scene, you know, and I wasn't playing in Seattle hardly at all these last several years, as my work took me around the country, around the world, and
Really?
that will come back slower than the local things, you know. And like
Yeah.
you're saying, so to have a relationship with a venue and a promoter, and get back to music being for that physical community, I think is
Yeah.
a good thing, you know.
For sure, man. My friend's husband he's a really well-known bass player, and you know he's got Bill Frisell playing in his front yard these days,
Yeah.
just like a couple blocks away. You know, it's like really come down to the street level, which is super awesome. It's great to see. We have just a couple more minutes before we wrap up this segment and bring Andrew on. Just tell everybody where they can get in touch with you if they wanted to learn more about your album or purchase it or anything else. Give people some contact.
Oh, sure. Well, my website is just tedpoor.com, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, same name there. And the label is Impulse Records. You can head over there for more information about the record. And yeah, it's on all the streaming platforms, and it's out there.
Awesome.
So,
iTunes and all that good stuff.
yes, indeed. Yeah.
And have you noticed, I mean, probably more digital sales than physical sales since it came out?
I don't know, actually.
Oh, you're not looking? Like, I'm just not going to look.
Why would I look? Yeah.
Right. It's the truth and honesty to that, for sure.
No, but I mean, hey, to have the vinyl or the CD and hold it in your hand is a great feeling. And I know
Yes.
a lot of people still look for that over the digital, or at least to supplement the digital experience. So that's a good thing. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Really,
My
pleasure's
pleasure.
been all mine. All right. Wish you the
Thank you,
best.
Jeremiah.
You got it.
Likewise.
We'll catch up in the future. All right.
Okay, sounds good, man.
All right. Thanks.
See you
All right,
later.
everybody. We'll be back. We're going to zoom it back to Brooklyn. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a minute.